The hall was filled with soft murmurs, flashes of camera lights, and the quiet hum of anticipation. People from across the globe had gathered that day. World leaders, tech giants, scholars, and journalists sat in polished rows under the glowing ceiling of the Grand Convention Center in New Delhi. Everyone knew something special was going to happen, but no one knew what it was. The invitation had only said, "A tribute to those who built silently." In the front row sat Sundar Pichai. He looked calm as always, dressed in a simple, dark suit, his glasses reflecting the stage lights. Next to him sat his wife and children. His hands were folded, resting on his knees, but his fingers tapped slowly. He was used to recognition, used to being interviewed and admired, but today felt different. The silence before the event carried a strange weight. Sundar did not know that his entire life was about to change. Just behind Sundar sat his mother, Lakshmi Pichai. She wore a plain cream-colored sari with a thin gold border. Her hair was tied back neatly. She looked around with quiet eyes, her hands resting gently in her lap. No one knew her name. No cameras turned toward her. She was simply a mother, sitting behind her world-famous son. Her presence, to many, was invisible. But to Sundar, she was the reason he could sit where he sat today. The room suddenly dimmed. A spotlight moved to the stage. Then the doors opened. Prime Minister Narendra Modi walked out with calm, measured steps. The crowd stood and clapped, the applause echoing off the high marble walls. He smiled and nodded politely, greeting the audience with folded hands. Then he raised one hand slightly, and the room returned to silence. Modi stepped up to the podium and looked over the crowd. His voice came through clearly, calm and steady. "Today," he said, "we are not here to celebrate titles, not awards, not achievements measured in numbers. Today, we are here to honor something greater, something quieter, something without which none of our progress would be possible." Sundar tilted his head slightly, confused. He was not told about this part of the program. Modi continued, "There is a name that most people in this room may not know, a name that has not appeared in the newspapers, a name that did not trend on social media, and yet, this name shaped one of the brightest minds our country has ever seen." Lakshmi Pichai, sitting quietly, blinked slowly. Her hands stopped moving. She leaned forward just slightly, unsure. Modi looked straight ahead. "That name is Lakshmi Pichai." The room froze. You could hear the breath catch in people's throats. Journalists looked at each other. Photographers paused. Even Sundar turned, stunned. He looked back at his mother, his eyes wide. Lakshmi's lips parted. Her fingers trembled. She tried to understand what she had just heard. Modi stepped aside. A large screen lit up behind him. Black and white photos appeared. A small house in Chennai. A woman sewing clothes by a window. A boy studying under a weak yellow bulb. Lakshmi Pichai's life unfolded, picture by picture, word by word. Modi's voice narrated gently. She woke before the sun, walked to the market, bought vegetables with coins she had counted 3 times. She taught her son that every book was a doorway, every failure was a teacher, and every success belonged to those who stayed kind. Tears welled up in Lakshmi's eyes. Her son, still turned toward her, could not move. He looked like a boy, again, lost in the emotion of memories he had long buried under layers of responsibility and success. "Lakshmi Pichai," Modi said, his voice steady, never asked for attention. She never asked for praise. But today, in front of the world, we say her name, not as a footnote, not as a shadow, but as a guiding light. Slowly, the audience stood, one by one. First the front row, then the next, and the next. A full standing ovation, not for the CEO of Google, but for the woman behind him. Lakshmi placed one hand over her heart. Her other hand reached for Sundar. He took it and held it tightly. He had given speeches in Silicon Valley. He had met presidents and kings. but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His lips trembled, his shoulders shook. Modi stepped forward again. We speak often of technology, of the future. But let us never forget, every giant stands on the shoulders of someone who gave everything and asked for nothing. Then he turned toward Lakshmi. Ma, he said softly, using the Hindi word for mother, we thank you. Lakshmi bowed her head. Her tears fell, not from sadness, but from something deeper, feeling of being seen, and then came a moment that would echo through history. Modi stepped down from the podium. He walked across the stage, toward the front row. He stopped in front of Lakshmi and folded his hands with respect. Without words, he honored her. Lakshmi slowly stood, her hands trembling. Modi offered his seat on stage to her. The audience gasped again. Lakshmi walked, slowly, to the stage. The cameras finally turned toward her, but she did not look at the cameras. She looked at her son. Sundar stood still. He could not find the strength to follow. His eyes filled, and his hands shook. On stage, Lakshmi did not speak. She simply folded her hands in front of her chest and nodded. Modi smiled, then turned back to the mic. Let this moment remind us, he said, that behind every success, there is a quiet story. And sometimes, the quietest stories are the most powerful. Outside the hall, a light drizzle began to fall on the city. But inside, there was a different kind of rain, silent, warm tears flowing down faces across the room. And in that silence, something inside Sundar Pichai shifted. He had always known he was successful, but now, he finally understood why, and this was just the beginning. The sun had already begun to set by the time the event ended. The air in New Delhi was filled with a quiet sense of something sacred, something unforgettable. As the audience exited the hall, most did not talk loudly. They walked in silence, as if their hearts were too full to form words. Lakshmi Pichai remained seated on the stage for a while longer. Sundar had walked up to her slowly, eyes still red, hands gently holding hers. She looked at her son and smiled with the kind of softness only a mother could offer. There was pride in her eyes, but more than that, there was peace. They did not speak much. They did not need to. When they finally left the stage, a dozen people came forward to greet Lakshmi. For the first time in her life, people were calling her by name. They weren't saying, "You're Sundar's mother." Instead, they were saying, "You are Lakshmi, Ji, we honor you." She nodded quietly each time, still not used to the attention. As they stepped outside, a light wind passed through the trees. The road ahead was blocked by a crowd of journalists, all waiting for a quote from Sundar. He raised one hand to pause them and then did something unexpected. He pointed gently toward his mother. "Today," he said, "is not about me. It is about her." Lakshmi looked up at him, startled. Sundar stepped aside, allowing his mother to walk ahead of him. The cameras flashed, but Sundar did not smile. His face was serious, as if he finally understood the weight of everything that had just happened. They got into the car. The driver turned the key. Silence filled the vehicle. After a few minutes, Sundar finally spoke. "Amma," he said softly, "do you remember the day I missed the interview at IT?" Lakshmi smiled. "Yes," she said. "You were crying. You thought your life was over." He chuckled lightly. "And you said, 'Your life is not one train, Sundar. It is the journey to the station.'" Lakshmi laughed gently. "You were always in a hurry. And you," he said, "were always calm." Their eyes met. A moment of shared memory passed between them, wordless but full. Back at the hotel, the night was quiet. Sundar sat on the balcony with a cup of tea. His mother stood beside him, looking out at the city lights. "Do you feel different now?" he asked. She nodded. "Not because people know me, but because you still remember who I am." He looked down. "I forgot for a while, Amma. I didn't mean to." "The world moves fast, and you moved faster," she said kindly. "But now, "You're home." A knock came on the door. Sundar opened it. It was an assistant with a message. Prime Minister Modi had requested a private breakfast with Sundar and his mother the next morning. Lakshmi froze when she heard the news. "Why would he want to meet me again?" she asked. "Because you changed the room today," Sundar replied, without saying a word. Early the next morning, they arrived at the Prime Minister's residence. The room was warm and simple, with hand-painted walls and old wooden furniture. Modi welcomed them himself, without any aids. He greeted Lakshmi with folded hands. "You taught the nation something yesterday," he said. "You showed us the strength of quiet sacrifice." Lakshmi bowed her head. "I only did what any mother would do." "No," Modi said. "You did what many could not. You raised a child with vision, kindness, and humility, and you did it with very little." They sat and shared breakfast idly, sambar, and filtered coffee. The conversation flowed easily. Modi asked Lakshmi about her early days. She spoke slowly, each word filled with memory. "We had one fan in the house," she said, "and 3 children. Sundar always let the others sleep near it. He never complained. He read his books in the kitchen where it was hotter." Sundar looked away, wiping his eyes quietly. Modi leaned in. "Lakshmi ji, would you allow me to do something unusual?" She looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I want to tell your story," he said. "Not just once. I want every school child, every mother, every teacher in India to know." "Your name?" Lakshmi froze. Sundar looked surprised. "Prime Minister ji, are you sure?" Modi nodded. "We have plenty of textbooks filled with great men. It is time we speak of great women who stayed behind the curtain." Lakshmi whispered, "I never wanted fame. I only wanted peace for my family. And that," Modi said gently, "is exactly why the world needs to hear you." The next few days were a whirlwind. National newspapers published her story on the front page. Schools across India began introducing a lesson titled "The Silent Strength of Lakshmi Pichai." News anchors told the story with tears in their eyes. Hashtags trended. College students wrote essays. Women in villages sent letters. Even children in remote areas knew her name. Lakshmi stayed quiet through all of it, but something was stirring inside her. One evening, she walked into Sundar's room. "I want to do something," she said. He looked up. "What is it, Amma?" "I want to visit the school I studied in, and the one you studied in. I want to meet the children." Sundar smiled. "Then we'll go." A few days later, they stood outside the small government school in Chennai. Lakshmi had not been there in decades. The walls were still faded. The desks were old. But the children's eyes were bright. Lakshmi walked into a classroom, her heart beating fast. A little girl stood and asked, "Are you the mother of the man who makes Google?" Lakshmi bent down and said, "I am the mother of a boy who used to dream on a broken chair and read under a dim bulb." The girl smiled. "Then I will also dream." Lakshmi touched her head gently. "Yes, and don't forget to be kind." The children clapped. As they walked out, Sundar looked at his mother. "Amma," he said, "you just gave something bigger than search results. You gave hope." Lakshmi laughed. "I only gave what I had." That night, she sat by the window of her old home, thinking. She did not know the whole world was watching, but the world had finally learned something very important. Sometimes the strongest hands are the ones that never ask to be seen. And Lakshmi Pichai's hands had built something greater than any title. They had built a man. The morning sun filtered softly through the old lace curtains in Lakshmi Pichai's childhood home. Birds chirped gently in the distance, and the air carried the smell of jasmine and fresh rain. Lakshmi sat on a wooden bench in the courtyard, her fingers wrapped around a steel cup of warm milk. She was home again, but it didn't feel quite the same. Something inside her had changed, and outside, the world had changed too. Messages continued to pour in from all corners of India. Handwritten letters from school children, voice notes from young women in small towns, even video messages from working mothers who saw their own struggle reflected in hers. They spoke of hope. They spoke of courage. They spoke of dreams, once buried, now rising like morning light. Lakshmi read each message with quiet eyes. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she wiped her eyes silently. But mostly, she sat still, soaking in the stories like raindrops on dry land. Sundar walked into the courtyard and handed her a letter. "Amma," he said, "this one came from a school in Rajasthan. The teacher said all her girl students stood up and shouted your name after morning prayer." Lakshmi held the letter tightly. "I don't know how to answer all of them," she whispered. Sundar smiled. "You already have, just by being who you are." Later that week, a new invitation arrived. It wasn't from a politician or a news anchor. It came from a group of mothers in a remote village in Orissa. They had pooled money to organize a small event. They wanted Lakshmi to visit. They said, "We don't want a celebrity. We want a mother who understands us." Lakshmi showed the letter to Sundar. "I want to go," she said. "Are you sure?" Sundar asked. "It's a long journey." She nodded. "They took the time to write to me. The least I can do is go and listen." 2 days later, they arrived in the village. The roads were narrow, unpaved. Children ran barefoot. Old men sat under lime trees. Women peeked from their doors. But as Lakshmi stepped out of the car, something beautiful happened. No one asked her for a selfie. No one screamed her name. Instead, the women folded their hands and welcomed her with silence and grace. They led her to a small hut where a gathering had been arranged. Clay pots lined the walls. Garlands of marigolds hung from the beams. Around 40 women sat on the floor, most holding babies or toddlers in their arms. They looked at Lakshmi not with excitement, but with respect. Deep, quiet respect. Lakshmi sat on a mat among them. No microphone, no stage, just shared space. A young mother stood up and spoke in a soft voice. "My son wants to go to school," she said, "but my husband says it is a waste of money. I have no answer for him. What should I do?" Lakshmi took a deep breath. "When Sundar was young," she said, "we had very little. Some nights we did not even have enough rice. But I always told him, education is your inheritance. I stitched clothes in the day and taught him math at night. We did not wait for the world to make it easy. We walked anyway." The women nodded. Some wiped their eyes. One by one, they began to speak. Stories of pain, of strength, of hard choices made in silence. Lakshmi listened to them all. She held their hands. She blessed their children. She promised nothing but gave everything through her presence. After hours passed, one woman said, "Today we feel seen." Lakshmi replied, "Then don't ever dim your light again." As she stood to leave, the women formed a circle around her and sang a local folk song. Its meaning was simple. The tree that gives shade never asks for praise. Sundar watched from a corner, stunned by the power of the moment. Not because his mother had spoken like a leader, but because she had listened like one. On their way back, he turned to her. "Amma," he said, "you've done more in 3 weeks than some ministers do in 3 years." Lakshmi shook her head, gently. "I have not changed the world. I have only watered a few roots." Back in Chennai, more invitations arrived. A university wanted to name a new library after her. A publishing house wanted her to write a memoir. News channels asked for interviews. But Lakshmi remained quiet. Finally, she spoke to Sundar. "I don't want to be on TV. I don't want a book. But I want to build something." "What do you want to build, Amma?" he asked. She looked up, her eyes steady. "I want to build a school, not just for children, but for mothers. A place where they can learn, read, speak, dream." Sundar smiled. "Then let's do it." They called it Uma's Pathsala. The land was donated by a farmer who said Lakshmi's story reminded him of his mother. The bricks were carried by local workers who said, "This school is for our future." The money came quietly, through donations big and small. Within months, the first building stood proud. White walls, open windows, and a signboard that simply read, "A place for every mother who believed in her child before the world didn't." The first day, Lakshmi walked into the school holding the hands of two women. One was a widow, the other, a housemaid. Both were learning to read. Double quotes, "Start with your name," Lakshmi said softly. The women held pencils for the first time. Outside, Sundar stood by the gate, watching. His phone buzzed with alerts from Silicon Valley. But for now, none of it mattered, because inside, a mother had created something timeless, and the sound of chalk against the blackboard felt louder than any applause. Lakshmi sat by the window as the class ended, her hands folded, her eyes full. "Umma's Pathshala," she whispered to herself. "May you grow stronger than me." The next day, something unexpected happened. A woman from another village arrived with her daughter. She held a torn newspaper clipping with Lakshmi's picture. "I sold my bangles to come here," she said. "I want my daughter to study where you teach." Lakshmi held the girl close and smiled. "Then she will," she said. "This door will never close." And it didn't. Single quotes. Not for the hundreds who came after. Not for the dreams that had once lived in the shadows. Not for the quiet strength that had finally found its voice. The early mornings at Umma's Pathshala had become sacred, before the sun had fully risen. Women and children gathered near the gates. Some came by foot from neighboring villages. Some held their babies on one hip and books in the other hand. The school bell didn't just mark the beginning of class. It marked the beginning of belief. Lakshmi Pichai now wore a plain white sari with a sky blue border each morning. Simple, clean, her presence had become a symbol. Not of fame, not of position, but of possibility. One morning, as she was arranging chalk on the teacher's table, a small girl tugged at her. "Sorry, Ammaji," the girl said softly. "Is it true your son works with computers that talk?" Lakshmi smiled. "Yes. He works with people who build computers that talk, think, and even answer questions." The girl tilted her head. "Can computers teach us how to be good?" Lakshmi sat beside her. "No, but your mother can. And you can, if you choose kindness." The girl nodded, holding her notebook tighter. That same day, Sundar visited the school quietly. He didn't bring cameras. He didn't bring staff. He walked in alone, wearing a plain shirt and jeans, holding two large boxes of books. When he saw his mother sitting under the banyan tree, teaching 10 women how to write their names in English, he paused. She was using a stick in the dirt, drawing letters slowly. There were no fancy tablets, no smart boards. Only dust and determination. He waited till the lesson ended. Lakshmi looked up. "You came," she said. "I brought some books," Sundar replied. He opened the boxes. Inside were simple readers, first-grade English, basic science, and Hindi grammar. He had selected each one himself. Lakshmi touched the books gently. "You still remember how to give," she said. That afternoon, Lakshmi and Sundar sat on the school steps, watching the children play. Sundar leaned against the pillar. "Amma, do you ever miss the days when things were simple?" Lakshmi looked ahead. They were never simple, Sundar. They were just quiet. He nodded slowly. "You know, after the speech Modi ji gave, Google asked if they could do a tribute." "What kind of tribute?" she asked. "They want to feature you on the home page, just for one day." Lakshmi froze. "My face on Google?" she asked. "Yes, as a tribute to the invisible builders." Lakshmi thought for a long moment. "I will do it, if it also includes the faces of the mothers who helped build this school." Sundar smiled. "Then we will do it that way." And so it happened. On a quiet Monday morning, Google's homepage showed a black and white photo of Lakshmi, surrounded by village women and school children. Beneath it was a short line. To the ones who built futures, in silence millions clicked. Articles were written. People cried. Teachers across the globe told her story to students. Tech offices paused for a moment of silence. Even world leaders tweeted their respect, but Lakshmi. She simply walked back into her classroom and continued teaching alphabets that evening. After school ended, a car pulled up outside the school gate. A government officer stepped out. He carried a sealed letter. Sundar took it and read it aloud. The President of India wishes to meet Mrs. Lakshmi Pichai at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. A special award will be given in recognition of her role in national inspiration. Lakshmi shook her head slowly. Why do they want to keep giving me things? Because you gave the world something priceless, Sundar said. She thought for a moment and whispered, I only gave what I had. A week later, they traveled to Delhi again. The city looked the same, but Lakshmi felt different this time. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't afraid. She had already faced the world. Now she walked with steady grace at the president's residence. She was received with warm hands and quiet honor. In the main hall, surrounded by dignitaries, a golden medal was placed around her neck. The room clapped. The nation watched live, and still Lakshmi said nothing. She simply folded her hands and bowed her head. But then something happened that no one expected. As she stepped down from the stage, she asked for the microphone. A hush fell over the room. She stood for a moment, holding the mic in both hands. And then she began. I am honored, she said. But this award does not belong to me alone. It belongs to the mothers who sold gold bangles to send their sons to school. To the women who wake before sunrise and sleep after midnight. To the fathers who choose books over bricks. To the children who believe that one day, their story will also matter. She paused. This award belongs to those who are still waiting to be seen. The applause was slow at first, but then it grew, and for the second time in her life, Lakshmi was given a standing ovation. Back home that night, Lakshmi sat by the window again. Sundar placed a cup of warm tea in her hands. You spoke beautifully, Uma. She smiled. Do you know why I finally spoke? He shook his head. Because the world is listening now. And when the world listens, we must say something that matters. A few days later, Sundar got a call from a major education trust. They wanted to expand Emma's Pathshala across the country. 10 schools, 50, maybe even 100. He took the idea to his mother. Lakshmi was quiet. More schools would help. More women, Sundar said. More children. More lives. Yes, Lakshmi replied. But promise me something. Anything, he said. No big gates. No luxury. Keep them simple. Open windows. Clean water. And always, a tree. A tree. Yes, she said. Every school must have a tree. Children must grow with something alive. He smiled. Done. And so, the dream grew. M.A. single quotes as Pathshalas began appearing in small corners of India. From the hills of Uttarakhand to the fields of Punjab. From the slums of Mumbai to the forests of the Northeast. The schools were simple, just like she wanted. But inside them, a quiet fire was being lit, and everywhere, beneath the painted boards, one line was always written. We see you. Lakshmi's story had become more than just a tribute. It had become a movement built on humility, respect, resilience, and kindness. But just when the world thought it had heard all there was to Hera, secret from her past began to surface. A story no one knew, a moment she had never spoken of, not even to Sundar, and when it came to light, the world held its breath. It began with an old photograph, a faded black and white picture tucked away inside an old steel trunk under Lakshmi Pichai's bed. The picture showed a teenage girl standing barefoot outside a small school building. Her uniform was torn at the hem. Her hands held a rolled-up notebook, but what stood out was her face full of quiet defiance. One afternoon, while Lakshmi was at Uma's Pathshala, a volunteer named Reena was helping organize old belongings for a school museum. She opened the trunk gently and found the photo wrapped in a cotton cloth. She brought it to Sundar, who was visiting that day. "Sir," she said, "this might be personal, but there's something written on the back." Sundar turned it over. It read, "Lakshmi, age 15, expelled for refusing to stop teaching. Other girls under the tree." He stared at it for a long moment. He had never seen this before. When Lakshmi returned that evening, Sundar showed her the photograph. Her fingers trembled as she took it. "AMM," he said quietly. "What is this?" She sat down slowly, and for the first time, Lakshmi told the story. "I was 15, she began. Our school was run by a strict headmaster. One day, he found out I was using the lunch break to teach the younger girls who couldn't read. We sat under the neem tree with chalk and broken slates. He said it was against the rules. He told me to stop." She paused. "I didn't." Sundar leaned forward. "What happened then?" "He expelled me." The room was silent. "I cried all night," she whispered. "But the next morning, I went back to the tree and taught again. The other girls followed. For weeks, we had no classroom, only dirt, leaves, and sunlight." Sundar's voice broke. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Lakshmi looked at him, her eyes full. "Because I never wanted you to grow up with anger. I wanted you to move forward, not carry the weight of my struggle." Tears rolled down Sundar's cheeks. "You didn't just survive, Uma," he said. "You resisted." The next day, Sundar shared the story with a journalist friend, not for headlines, but because he believed it mattered. Soon, it spread. News anchors called it the Silent Rebellion. Activists wrote articles about how Lakshmi's teenage defiance was more powerful than any protest. Schools across India shared the story with students, under neem trees and banyan trees. Girls started small reading circles and called them Lakshmi Corners. But there was one thing left undone. The headmaster who expelled her was still alive. He was now in his late 80s, living in a small town nearby. He had heard the news. He had watched Lakshmi on television. He had read the articles. And one morning, he sent a letter to Emas Pathshala. It was short. "Dear Lakshmi, I remember the girl who refused to stop teaching. I see now that I was wrong. If you allow it, I would like to meet you, to say sorry, to say thank you." Lakshmi read the letter and remained silent for a long time. Then she nodded. "Yes," she said. "Let him come." A week later, the old headmaster walked through the school gates, his steps slow, his eyes filled with something between shame and hope. He was greeted not with anger, but with warmth. Lakshm. I met him in the garden. The neem tree nearby had grown large over the years. Its shade covered the stone bench where they now sat. The headmaster folded his hands. "I was harsh," he said, "and blind to your courage." Lakshmi placed her hand gently over his. "You were doing what you were taught, and I was doing what my heart told me." He looked at her, stunned. "How can you forgive me so easily?" "Because forgiveness sets two people free," she said, "and we both deserve to be free now." They sat in silence. Nearby, children's laughter filled the air. Women practiced reading. Chalk tapped softly against slates. The headmaster looked around. "You built a whole world from that one tree." Lakshmi smiled. "You tried to cut it down, but the roots had already taken hold." Word of their meeting reached millions. The picture of Lakshmi and the old headmaster sitting under the neem tree became a symbol of healing, of humility, of grace. Even Narendra Modi shared it online, writing, "True strength lies in forgiveness, and true history is made, not in anger, but in understanding." That same week, Sundar was invited to speak at an international summit on innovation and education. He was expected to speak about technology, artificial intelligence, and the future of work. But he began with a story. "When I was growing up," he said, I thought my mother was just a quiet woman with tired eyes. I did not know she was a rebel, a builder, a teacher, and a fighter. I stand here not because I learned coding, but because she never stopped teaching, whether under a roof or under a tree." The hall rose to its feet in applause. Meanwhile, back in the village, Lakshmi was preparing for something else. A girl named Asha had written to her. Asha had lost her mother at a young age. She was shy, quiet, and rarely spoke. She had been attending Uma's Patshala for 6 months. Now, she wanted to speak to Lakshmi privately. Lakshmi welcomed her into the office. Asha handed her a folded notebook page. "Dear Amma ji, I want to ask something, if I am allowed. Can I call you Amma? Just Amma, not Amma ji, not teacher, just Amma. I have not said that word in 5 years." Lakshmi held the letter to her chest. She nodded. "Yes, Asha, I would be honored." Asha smiled for the first time, and from that day, children at the school began calling her Amma, not as a title but as a feeling. Lakshmi didn't just build a school, she became a home for those who had none. The woman who once taught letters in the dirt now wrote new chapters in hearts. But even as the school grew, and the world kept watching, a letter arrived from across the ocean, from a place Lakshmi had never been, and inside it was an invitation that would change everything. The envelope was cream-colored, thick, and sealed with gold embossing. The return address said Washington, D.C. Lakshmi Pichai had never received a letter like it before. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten invitation. "Dear Mrs. Lakshmi Pichai, we are honored to invite you as our chief guest at the Global Education Summit at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Your story has touched millions across borders. We believe your voice can remind the world that quiet courage builds lasting change. Respectfully, Committee Chair, Global Education Summit." Lakshmi placed the letter on her lap. She looked out the window at the children playing under the neem tree. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she turned to Sundar. "I'm just a mother from Chennai," she said softly. "Why would the world want to hear from me?" Sundar knelt beside her. "Because you taught us all something, Amma," he said. "You taught us that greatness doesn't need volume. It only needs truth." Lakshmi took a deep breath. "I'll go," she said. "But I won't go alone." 2 weeks later, Lakshmi, Sundar, and 2 young girls from Uma's Pathshala boarded a flight to New York. It was Lakshmi's first time on an airplane. She held Asha's hand during takeoff and smiled when she saw clouds from above for the first time. "They look like soft rice," she whispered. In New York, the streets were busy, loud, and unfamiliar. But Lakshmi walked with quiet confidence. She wore a simple beige sari with a maroon border. Her hair was tied back neatly. Around her wrist was a cloth bracelet handmade by the children back home. It had only one word stitched in red thread. Hope. The day of the summit arrived. The United Nations hall was packed. Delegates from over 100 countries sat with headphones on, ready to hear speeches from presidents, scientists, and scholars. But when Lakshmi stepped up to the podium, something shifted. The room went silent. Lakshmi stood for a moment, eyes calm. Then, she began. "I never thought I would leave my village," she said. "And now I am standing in front of the world." Her voice was steady, humble, strong. "I am not a leader," she said. "I am not a speaker. I am simply a mother. A mother who once taught letters in the dirt under a tree. A mother who believed her child's dream mattered even when no one else did." She paused. "And today, I speak for every parent who sacrifices in silence, for every girl who sits on a stone floor and dares to read, for every teacher who uses a stick and soil to write alphabets, for every forgotten soul who chooses kindness over noise." As she spoke, the translators whispered her words into many languages, and across the room, people wiped their eyes quietly. "I have seen what one tree can do," she said. "I have seen children become dreamers. I have seen women become teachers, and I have learned that sometimes The most powerful revolutions begin not with a shout, but with a whisper. The room stood all at once. A standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Lakshmi stepped down slowly. Sundar waited for her at the bottom of the stairs. His hands shook as he hugged her. "You didn't just speak, Uma," he whispered. "You awakened the world." After the speech, international schools began requesting partnerships with Uma's pathshala. Organizations donated books, tablets, and scholarships. Countries invited Lakshmi to speak again, but she refused everyone. "I have said what I needed to say," she told Sundar. "Now let me return to where my voice began." They flew home. Back to Chennai. Back to the neem tree, and nothing felt more right. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A journalist came to interview Lakshmi one last time. He asked, "How do you want to be remembered?" Lakshmi thought for a moment. Then she said, "I don't." The journalist looked confused. Lakshmi smiled gently. "I don't need to be remembered," she said. "I only want children to remember how it feels to be seen, to be loved, to be believed in. That is enough." And so, years passed. Lakshmi remained where she had always been, among books, children, laughter, and the quiet power of belief. When she grew older, she walked slower, but she still visited the classroom each morning, still listened to every child's story, still folded her hands with the same grace that once moved a room full of world leaders. And, when the day came that the neem tree dropped all its yellow leaves at once, it felt as if the earth itself paused in respect. Lakshmi Pichai passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 91. But her story did not end. It became part of the land, part of the soil under the feet of every girl who dared to dream. A statue was never built. A temple was never raised. But at every Uma's pathshala, a single plaque was placed at the entrance, in memory of the mother who made the world listen without ever raising her voice, and beneath it, one line that never faded. When Narendra Modi honored Sundar Pichai's mother, the room fell silent. Many years had passed since the world first heard Lakshmi Pichai's name. Amma. Single quotes as pathshala had grown across continents, from India to Africa, from South America to Southeast Asia. Simple schools made of stone, wood, and hope stood tall beneath trees and open skies. No matter the language, no matter the soil, every building carried the same message at its gate: "We see you." Some were teenagers too, classrooms under tin roofs. Some had dozens of students, learning with nothing but chalk and recycled notebooks. But in each one, a woman sat quietly at the front of the class, holding the dreams of her community like fragile lamps in her hands. Every one of those women, called Lakshmi Amma. But one school, hidden in a small village near Chennai, remained special. The original Uma's pathshala, the neem tree, still stood strong under its shade. A new generation of children now played, unaware of the history rooted in the soil beneath their feet. Sundar Pichai, now older and silver-haired, visited quietly one morning. He walked through the gates, not as the CEO of a global company, but as a son returning home. The classrooms were still modest, the laughter still sweet, but something new caught his eye on the far wall. Inside the oldest classroom hung a large frame. Inside it was the photo that started everything, the black and white picture of 15-year-old Lakshmi, barefoot, holding her notebook beside the school she had once been expelled from. Below it was a handwritten quote in her own writing: "When no one let me speak, I taught with silence." Sundar touched the frame gently. A young teacher approached him. She was around 22, full of energy and kindness. "Sir," she said, "did you know Amma personally?" He smiled softly. "I lived my whole life trying to become worthy of her." She nodded, her eyes shining. "We all try." That afternoon, Sundar sat with the students. He told them stories of how his mother would save torn pages and make books out of old wrappers. How she stitched clothes at night so he could buy one school uniform. How she taught him that even in the smallest corner of the world, dreams can grow if they are watered with love. He stood up and said, "My mother never wanted to be famous. She just wanted children to never feel unseen." The children listened closely. Some wrote it down. Others just smiled. As Sundar was about to leave, one little boy raised his hand. "Sir," he asked, "do you still miss her?" Sundar turned, eyes full. "Every day," he replied, "but I see her here, in all of you." He looked at the Nime tree again. "She never wanted statues," he said. "She only wanted shade." Outside India, something else was happening. On International Women's Day, a global foundation released a short animated film. It told Lakshmi Pichai's story from beginning to end. It showed her as a young girl defying the odds, as a mother, teaching letters in dust, as a woman who stood silently while the world rose around. The film ended with her quote, "I never built an empire. I only built one heart at a time." The film went viral. Millions cried, and in homes, schools, offices, and villages, people spoke her name again, not just as Sundar Pichai's mother, but as a symbol of humility, as a reminder of resilience, as a teacher of silent strength in her hometown. They renamed a street after her, but no one drove fast on it, out of respect. Drivers slowed down as they passed. Some even turned off their music. Children playing nearby were told that road was named after the woman who made the world quiet with kindness. One final moment must be shared. A girl named Maya, from a village in Nepal, applied for a scholarship through Amma's Pathshala International Program. She was selected. When asked, during her interview, "What does Amma's story mean to you?" she replied, "She taught me that even if I have no shoes, no books, and no voice, I still matter." She paused and added, "Because someone like her once sat where I sit now." Maya was accepted. She studied medicine. She returned to her village years later and opened a free clinic next to a tree. She named it Amma's Healing Branch, and when asked why a clinic should be named after a teacher, Maya said, "Because Amma healed more than just minds. She healed how we see ourselves." This is the end of the story. But her story doesn't truly end. Because as long as a child dreams quietly, as long as a mother teaches without reward, as long as someone chooses kindness over pride, Lakshmi Pichai light will continue to shine, not through applause, not through monuments, but through lives changed, silently, beautifully, forever.